the ratification process, the one amendment, the elections to the Senate, going to the legislators, the Senate going to the state legislators, with the state conventions. I guess one of the main faults.
You're talking about the original convention or the convention of states?
Not the convention of states.
Okay.
One thing I can see how this whole process could be corrected. I've always considered 3/4 of the states is a good criteria to be a state. The only scenario I could possibly see that may cause that is if it goes through the actual states conventions, individual state conventions for ratification. How does that process actually take place itself? We have something about history, the amendment to elections of the state U.S. senators change with that process. But how would it ever actually?
The Congress, and if I don't answer your question, then we can reiterate again, but what I think you're asking is the Congress has two roles in this. They call the convention and then they pick the mode. Whether in the state, they specify the legislature or by convention. To be honest with you, I would prefer it to happen in the state conventions because then people like me could be a delegate.
But how would the delegates select?
Delegates are selected. Again, we go back to history. Every convention that's ever been held, the state legislature selected those delegates. They can either select them from among themselves, well, that's factual. You might not like it, but that's fact. Every convention that's been held, there's been almost 40 of them in history. The convention in Annapolis was held. They were selected. Let's go back to the original. The Annapolis Convention was held prior to the Philadelphia Convention, 1 year prior. Every delegate to the Annapolis Convention, how many states showed up in Annapolis? So you need to learn that before you ask these questions. 5 states, hold on, 5 states showed up. 5 states showed up. Every one of the delegates from those states were selected by those states. In the Philadelphia Convention, every delegate that showed up in Philadelphia was selected by those state legislatures. Every one of them. There has never been a time where the Congress picked delegates to a convention.
That's not what I'm asking.
Oh, okay.
Wait. I'm talking about the ratification process using the individual state conventions. How are they selected?
A ratification in the states, in other words, proposed amendments go to the states. How are they selected?
No. Let's say it's already been proposed. Congress selected most, and they decided to state conventions.
Yes. How the
are
delegates
they
picked?
selected?
They're picked by the state legislature.
Okay.
The state legislatures will always pick the delegates.
Father, to follow up to what he was saying,
Yes.
although there's precedent as the way that's
Right.
been done, is there anything written saying it must be done that way?
No, but that's a cat chasing his tail. I can't stand up. Listen, I can't stand up here tonight and tell you this is perfect. It's going to work this way. I can't do that. I can't promise you. I can't even promise you there won't be a runaway concom. What I can tell you is from my study of history, that's extremely remote. That's just my opinion. But I ask you to go look at it for yourself. But look at it for yourself. The reason it's extremely remote is because of this right here. This is reality, folks. This was done by a guy named Brian Kelly. He works with the SA, the Low Country Conservatives in Action. He did this for me after I did a presentation up there in Somerville. He went and did this for me. And he told me, Bob, look, it's our playing field. I think this is brilliant. He took the 2000, 2004, the 2008, the 2012 elections, presidential elections, and he plotted Republican vote in every one of those by percent. Look at this down here. You got to get all the way to here. This is the 13th state right here in Mississippi. Do you think remember I said it only takes 13 states to stop something happening that shouldn't happen? Nobody's getting anything past Mississippi. And I had a guy ask me at that meeting, Bob, I'm worried about the Second Amendment. No, nobody worried about more than that than me. I wrote 308. I'm a gun freak. Okay? But I'm here to tell you, this past year, we got to be honest. At the beginning of 2013, we were told that the Democrats were going to were going to enact laws restricting our gun rights. And we know they tried to do it, but they couldn't do it. You know how they're going to end up doing it? They're going to end up doing it through executive order. They couldn't pass a law because they can't get that passed. Even in the United States Congress, they can't get that passed right now. But if we wait too long, they will. But you got 26 states with full Republican legislatures. It just can't happen. I'm just telling you. Is there that much of a possibility? Yes. But nothing's perfect. And what I'm telling you is we're staring at this right now. We're staring at a runaway federal government. If you look at this, if you honestly look at what's happening out there, what is more fearful, this or this? Not even close. I fear that. They're not going to do anything. Go ahead.
All right, so I got a couple questions for you. First off, there's no precedent, or there's nothing saying the way that it's absolutely going to run.
Yes, there is. Oh, there's great historical precedent. You asked me, could they change it?
Right.
But the precedent is clear.
No, they've got precedent, but there's nothing necessarily written down saying it's got to be done this way. And so basically what.
There's nothing to say that you're not gonna get run over when you go walk
Sure.
out the building.
Sure, I understand. But what you're saying is what the fail-safe is that you've got all the state legislators that are gonna stop it anyway. You know, even if.
What I'm saying is
something
that
like
38, what I'm saying is that I don't think you can get 38 states today to do, you pick it. Pick your rogue, runaway, liberal trashing of the Constitution. If you think you can get 38 states to do that, I don't see how you can get there.
Okay, so that's sort of the fail-safe. But now let me ask you, on the flag that you showed with all the states. it
Yes.
says- All right, I see California, I see
Yes.
Connecticut, I see.
Absolutely.
Now, to be real
Illinois,
honest.
California, they'll all send liberal delegates, we know that.
Okay, so the question is,
It's
what's in
reality.
it for them? Why in the world would they be supporting it?
They don't have to support
They
it.
only get one vote.
No,
They don't have to
I
support
understand, but what I'm saying is that, are they supporting it? Are they on?
As of right now, no. As of right now, no. Those are the states. There are 14 states. I just got the last numbers tonight. Yesterday, Alaska passed it in their House. They have to get it through their Senate. But there's 14 states that have introduced bills. And I got to tell you this. They have introduced the identical bill that we handed them. We handed them a template. That's very, very important. There's been 400 applications over the years. Not 400 years. But 400 applications have been submitted to Congress. And it's never called a convention because it has to be called for the exact same purpose. Aggregation is what that's called. That's not written anymore, but that's what the courts have said. That's why there's never been a convention. Matter of fact, Michael Ferris is one of 3 or 4 lawyers that's ever argued before a federal court an Article 5 case. So the guy has experience.
So is there, and I apologize, one more question. Is there an agenda? Do states know before they're calling for the convention what the agenda is going to be? Or
Yes.
is the agenda set once it's already called?
The agenda that we've introduced in those 14 states is this. You can look at our template. If you go on www.conventionofstates.com, there's a handbook on there that gives you a lot more information than I was able to cover tonight. There's a template bill that those 14 states have introduced the identical bill. I worked with Representative Bill Taylor in Aiken to have him introduce our bill, with Senator Larry Grooms as a sponsor. Those of you know the Senator Larry Grooms. By the way, keep in mind, folks, they're not just quacks like, if they think I'm a quack, maybe you don't like Rush Limbaugh, maybe you don't like Mark Levin, maybe you don't like Glenn Beck, maybe you don't like David Barton, one of the greatest historians in our nation. All of these men.
Forget who you're speaking with.
All of these people support this process because they know we're up against the wall.
We like
We're up against the wall. But what I'm saying is I have people that are disparaging them because now they've come out for a convention of states. And my point is this. Those guys, they have a track record. They're not liberals. They're not backed by Soros because that's the stuff I'm hearing. You got to ask yourself that question.
Barbara and then Heather. Okay.
This man brought me a lunch in Myrtle Beach that I'm forever gratitude to you.
What are we, is it just one amendment? Is it a specific thing that we're trying to get done?
I didn't finish that a while ago. Our stated subject that we want every state to call for is this, quote unquote, amendments to limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. So therefore, only amendments that are germane to that call. If somebody introduces or throws on the table an amendment to eviscerate the Second Amendment, it's out of bounds. Oh, Bob, how do you know they won't entertain it? Because it will go into the courts and it will get tied up in the courts. And this is historical, if it doesn't follow, the reason they haven't been able to call for a BBA amendment, there's 21 applications in the Congress right now for a balanced budget amendment, 22 in the Congress right now for an Article 5 convention. They're all different. They're never going to get that convention called for. But to answer your question is amendments. Again, if you go on our website, we have some ideas. We can't tell the states what to propose, but we're trying to build a grassroots effort like never seen before. That's the other thing I failed to pitch to you tonight, is I'm looking for a district captain in every legislative district in the state. To move our bill, it takes people pushing to do that. So we're trying to build a grassroots effort. And then back to your question, to be able to hold their feet to the fire, to be able to have some influence on those amendments. But I would turn you to Mark Levin's book, The Liberty Amendments. He has 11 in there that are exactly the type of amendments that would fit limiting the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. Example, there's an amendment that's proposed. It's an idea, a 3/5 state override, and why 3/5? Make it 4/5 or 2/3. But you got to start somewhere. The convention will have to tinker with that language. But an idea is 3/5 state override of a Supreme Court decision. That puts teeth in this 10th Amendment. People say, Bob, we have the 10th Amendment. Remember what I just told you about how it's twisted? We don't have the 10th Amendment anymore. Oh, that's because they're not following it. Do you see any evidence of them getting ready to follow it on the horizon? But if you come up with an amendment that lets the states come together, Obamacare, we're trying to nullify it, and we ought to be trying to nullify it. Obamacare, 27 states filed suit in federal district court against Obamacare. Never before in the history of our nation have that many states opposed one federal law. If the states had a mechanism to override, and 3/5, by the way, would be 30, but if the states had a mechanism, that puts the Supreme Court back in check. They were never meant to be unfettered. Maybe term limits for Supreme Court justices. That's what I want. Maybe term limits for every federal official, term limits for them, so they go home. Yes?
Heather?
I was just going to ask, because we've been learning more about the balanced budget amendment, and I did bring, we talked about it at the last meeting, we did bring more of these brochures, they're over there. So I guess and I think I'm sort of understanding in your discussion here, what you're talking about is that working, are they working against each other or with each other?
No,
Because I mean,
we're not working against each other, but I can't honestly stand up here and tell you we're working with each other. We have testified in some of their hearings, so maybe that is working together. In Georgia, when they stood up in their hearing, just being honest with you, you can call Lou Marin and ask him this. He's the lead, he's the head of I Am American, that's that group.
Yeah.
He'll tell you this. In Georgia, right about the same time our bill was going through 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, they had two. They had an Article 5 call for a BBA, they had our language bill, the COS bill, for limiting the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, a package of amendments to a subject matter rather than a specific amendment. Our machine in Georgia, my colleague, my state director, and all of her district captains, they built a huge grassroots organization. They're way ahead of me. They stood in and were there in his meeting and stood with him. When it came time for our hearing, Lou was in another state. Maybe he couldn't be there. We're not working against each other, but we have two different. Here's the deal: the balanced budget amendment. Those guys, there's two guys that have been trying this for many, many years, for 40 years. Not the same two guys, but they've been trying to do that, and they haven't been successful. The two guys that started this organization. One of the reasons I came on board wasn't because I got sucked in. I looked at it hard. And I looked at it and I saw an organization and a design of an organization to make this happen like I've never seen before. But again, we've got to do it. We've got to put our money our actions where our mouth is, because I'm not looking for money. I'm looking for people to be volunteers. And a volunteer is simply somebody that says, when I call you, you'll send an email or make a phone call to a legislator. But I want leaders in every district. I've got many of them right now. There's 124 districts in South Carolina, and I have a bunch of those guys already. I'm not going to give away my number, but I got a bunch of those guys and gals.
so the one that, like, H 3862, which is currently in the Senate Finance Committee, and we're trying to get them to push it forward.
Right.
Do you have something that's already in Columbia?
Oh, yes.
It's going through?
Yeah.
Where is yours?
4372 was pre-introduced by Bill Taylor. I had 20 co-sponsors on the bill. And Senator Groom's introduced, and there's Senator Verdon is now signed on, and Senator Fair is on there. Had a little more trouble in the Senate than I am in the House. But that's all right. I'm not going away. Our organization's not going away. If we don't do it this year, we'll be back next year. I'm going to do this until I can't breathe anymore, because I'm convinced it's not going to get fixed.
Well, that I guess would go, because again, I'm sorry, we're still trying to learn all the ins and outs of all this. When they say, because we saw that Tennessee just passed it, so they say, okay, we're
Yes.
on 22.
Their language, every state's language has been different. They
So
weren't
because the
organized.
language is different, they're not going to be able to actually.
We don't think they're going to be able to pull off a convention. I can't
Okay.
say that.
That's a
We don't-
logical argument.
It's called
I was curious
aggregation.
if that was written somewhere.
It's called aggregation. There has to be an aggregated call for the exact same convention.
So even though it's all for the balanced budget amendment, if it doesn't, they aren't all worded.
Lou would tell you differently. Lou would tell you that they're still going to get it. But here's the thing. I'll be honest with you. Even if they do get it, people always say, hey, you need to support my candidate. You need to support your candidate. You support your candidate because you think he's the best candidate. This process right here, I'm for passing a balanced budget amendment, but I'm going to tell you what. That's a dangerous amendment to pass on its own. Dangerous. It can lead to the largest tax increase in the history of our nation, because people say, oh, we need a balanced budget. We do need a balanced budget. But if we don't have a package of language and other amendments to restrain spending, guess what Congress can do? They can comply with a balanced budget amendment simply by raising taxes. We're going to pay for all this stuff. Hey, we got to balance it. More taxes. It's a dangerous amendment. I'm leery of it. I'm okay with it if we put it in a package with other amendments. That's why we think we need a package of amendments to shackle the federal government. not just one. Yes, sir.
Okay, Don, you're the last question. I hate to cut it off.
So to answer your
So the
question,
pressure
I'm
is
not
to sum it up in a
but I'm not
question.
gonna throw all, I'm working my butt off in the Convention of States for a reason. So I'm not gonna put that machine behind it. I can't.
Oh, I just have a comment, and I'll phrase it like a question because it's question and answer, and that is that everyone should ask, is the risk embodied in an effort to have a convention of states greater than the risk of doing nothing? That's what you need to ask.
Brilliant question.
Well, Bob, boy, that was,
Forgive me. Brilliant. I'm sorry. But this is important stuff. It's not just because I think it's important. Whether or not you agree with this, and honest people can disagree on this stuff, I had to present the Constitution to you to understand where we are from it. And I know most of you already know that, but I hopefully gave you some tools to help you. Thanks.
yes, you did. Thank you very
Thank you,
much,
Bob.
Bob.